Alright, hello everyone. Today we're doing a forecast video because there is a bit of a tornado risk tomorrow. I know a lot of people are focused on the snow up here in the Ohio River Valley, but there is also a tornado risk I wanted to talk about, and maybe even a significant tornado risk. It is a bit conditional. The Storm Prediction Center just recently added a 10% risk area. It is unhatched, so Storm Prediction Center not that confident on strong tornadoes maybe, and I can somewhat agree. However, I do think, and I'll go over some reasons why I think the risk should definitely be extended a little bit more north up towards the Memphis area, or even the Memphis area, despite being very close to a winter storm up here, could be experiencing tornadic activity tomorrow. So let's get started. And here's the dew point. You typically want to see dew points in the 60s for most tornado setups, and we certainly have 60s dew points all the way from southeastern Texas, and like I said, all the way up towards Memphis, even getting some 60s dew points. And it's not just the dew points that make this setup a little bit concerning, potentially concerning. It's just the environment in general, and particularly the wind shear. Here's a sounding up near Memphis, and we can see weak instability, and that is one of the interesting things to note for this tornado setup. However, it isn't. It might be adequate for tornadoes, maybe especially QLCS tornadoes, any that could occur. So this is up near Memphis. And definitely, in my opinion, warrants at least a 2% risk of tornadoes because the instability, while weak, is coupled with a very impressive looking hodograph. 0 to 1 kilometer shear and 0 to 3 kilometer shear are over 40 knots each, and that's something you typically see with strongly sheared setups like the one that is forecast to happen tomorrow. Also a very favorable shape, maybe a little bit lacking in curvature, but you don't need a significant amount of curvature all the time, especially for these setups in Dixie Alley. So, I don't think I've ever used this on a channel forecast video before, but this is an algorithm I'm trying to make to forecast the chance of a nearby tornado in the same way that the Storm Prediction Center measures tornado risk. And so going off of information from this sounding up near Memphis, and this is actually just west of Memphis, so a little bit into Arkansas, it does put out a 10% risk, and this is something I've been testing for a while and I'm trying to perfect. So, in my opinion, there should definitely be some sort of tornado risk issued by the National Weather Service for the Memphis area. This algorithm puts out a 10% risk for this sounding. The good thing is, up north near Memphis, it's somewhat unlikely that we'll get strong tornadoes unless there is a significant shift in storm mode. Right now it looks like a linear storm mode, particularly further north. However, that can change, and we could still certainly be talking about a tornado setup in Memphis, and very conditionally a risk of a strong tornado up there. Looking a little bit at what it's seeing, the algorithm, it shows moisture not going to be a problem, wind shear definitely not a problem, and the instability is just a little bit on the low side up here, which is probably why the Storm Prediction Center doesn't have that risk up near Memphis and northeastern Arkansas. A little bit further to the south, this is southeastern Arkansas. This is where I think the tornado risk might be the highest, and is a little bit different than what the Storm Prediction Center has. It has it being a little bit further to the south. I think the greatest risk is a little bit more up here, particularly centered around southeastern Arkansas. So, photographs, not much different than further north. A little bit less curvature. Critical angles are below 45. However, it still has enough curvature for a tornado risk. And in my opinion, this could be enough for maybe a significant tornado if we can get enough instability, which it looks like we can get some adequate instability. Low 60s dew points with over 1,000 joules of surface-based cape. That is a pretty favorable combo, especially for this time of year. And once again, a lot of it is going to depend on storm mode. A little bit further south, it is a little bit more questionable as to whether or not we'll see a favorable orientation of a squall line or a dry line. Further north, there's a little bit more north-south orientation of the potential line of storms, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But going off just this, it does put out, with my sounding cast algorithm, a 15% risk. So it is definitely a bit higher than what the Storm Prediction Center has at the moment. I do think a strong tornado will be possible if we can get any discrete or semi-discrete storms with this setup, which is looking fairly possible at the moment. But if it does go linear, the significant tornado risk, and maybe even the tornado risk at all, overall would potentially go down. So here's around where the Storm Prediction Center has the highest risk, and we can see a little bit more instability, surface-based cape around 1400, so that's a little bit higher than further north. However, the photographs, in my opinion, do look a little bit less favorable. Shear values, low-level shear values are in the 30s instead of the 40s, maybe a little bit more curvature. However, overall, I do think that the greatest tornado risk might be shifting a little bit further north compared to what the Storm Prediction Center has at the moment. And if we put this into the sounding cast, it gets us 6% out. So perhaps not as high of a risk in, where was this? This was where the Storm Prediction Center had it. So northeastern Louisiana and southwestern Mississippi. So potentially I could see a shift in this yellow, so the 10% risk, a little bit further north up here, an extension of the 2% and 5% as well. And so here's at the moment what the HRRR is saying for storm mode. And it is a little bit early to be certain on this. However, we can see potentially a bit of a squall line trying to form, but there are still certainly some semi-discrete aspects and potential prefrontal supercells in the area where that's under the 10% risk at the moment. And I think that could be why the Storm Prediction Center opted to put the 10% risk a little bit further south instead of further north, because of a little bit more confidence in discrete supercells, which are the ones capable of producing the stronger tornadoes if the environment is right. So maybe a little bit more prefrontal stuff further south. However, maybe some semi-discrete aspects a little bit further north. Maybe right here in embedded supercells in southeastern Arkansas. Looking at some other models, I looked at the FV3 because it goes out 60 hours, and it did show definitely some semi-discrete embedded supercell type situation, which if that did come to fruition, I do think we could see some strong tornadoes. And up north, in terms of QLCS tornadoes, which are usually the more brief, weaker tornadoes that can happen with little warning, you usually want to look for a north to north-south orientation of the line of storms. And we get that a little bit more in around the Memphis area in northeastern Arkansas. You see a little bit further south in the linear storm mode, or QOCS. It's a little bit more southwest to northeast orientated, which is a little bit less favorable for QLCS tornadoes. So overall, conditional tornado outbreak possible tomorrow, in my opinion, from southwestern Mississippi, northeastern Louisiana, all the way up towards the Memphis area. I do think that if nothing big changes, the risk will be extended a little bit further north and potentially this 10% risk as well. Alright, so thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Goodbye.